Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm just kind of going to rant and rave about this patch, basically. And this is something I might do, periodically before we're going to get a patch to preview what I hope happens in the next patch. Everyone's obviously waiting for Crownfall or whatever. Hopefully we're getting a new hero, I think. That's kind of what everyone is anticipating for this next patch. And I think the one thing that kind of makes this patch significant, not just because it's probably going to be a big patch, but the other thing that makes it significant is that it's been, I think, pretty much a year now exactly, or almost a year, or just over a year, since they dropped the big patch, I don't even know, whatever it was called, that expanded the map and made it way bigger. And the map is part of the reason that this current patch is actually kind of terrible, or maybe not terrible, but just not as good as it otherwise would be or could be, or just the game in general just feels kind of annoying right now to play. And that's mainly because it's just too hard to end the game. Basically, there's so many things that they've added that just make it impossible to push high ground. And the number one thing that is so annoying that they definitely need to remove is the fact that there's 50,000 glyphs in the game. You destroy a tower, glyph. You destroy another tower, glyph. You destroy tier 3, glyph. You destroy barracks. It just feels like you have 50 glyphs. Just remove all of them. Because the problem is, I think they implemented these glyphs and the refreshing of the glyphs before they expanded the map. I'm pretty sure. Now I might be wrong about that. Someone might be correct me in the comments or whatever. But the problem was, the glyphs were just implemented because you didn't want these snowball lineups to just get out of control after the laning stage and prevent no chance from coming back, and then the game just ends in 25 minutes. Yeah, we don't necessarily want 20 to 25 minute average games or something like that, of course. But the problem is, ever since they expanded the map and now they have all these glyphs and all this stuff is happening, in the beginning when they first expanded the map, I said that this was going to make everybody just farm way more. You just should never fight. That's kind of what I said immediately, but everyone was like, no, that's dumb. When I would play games, people would just group up, and for the first 6 months, every patch was group up and fight, because people didn't know what to do. And that's firmly what I believe. I don't think it had anything to do with the balance. I think people just grouped up and fought all the time because they were so confused about what was going on. But in the back of my mind, I just knew you can't expand the map. You can't give all of these new creep camps and all of this new space. It's basically just like inflation. It's just basically supply and demand, kind of, in a way. There's so much more gold on the map. There's so much more space. It's so much harder to find heroes and pick them off than it used to be. I mean, if you kind of went back in time to before they expanded the map, it just feels insane. How you even were able to split push, or how you would even be able to farm the jungle, because there's, think about it. If the carrier treated to farm jungle before they expanded the map, there was really only two places to go. There was the jungle right there at the tower, or they could go across the other side of the entire map and do the ancient camp. And that was it. There's really nowhere else to go. I mean, you could maybe do some weird stuff where you went to the enemy side, but that's only kind of weird stuff if they didn't have a ward or no one else was doing it, or, you were losing so hard that the enemy was on your side. It was just very awkward, or maybe you were an AM later in the game. But the map was just so much smaller, and you kind of wanted to make space for the carry, and then split pushing was a lot different. I mean, yes, you could go in the trees that were kind of on the edge of the map and stuff, and there were some paths there and things, and a hill, where you could put a ward on for Tinker and things like that, but that was not really used other than that. And now, ever since then, there's so much more gold. The obvious conclusion, the obvious, consequence of that is just that all of these heroes are going to get so much more farm, and that we can see that happening. That's basically been happening ever since then, and now it's gotten to the point where I think a year later, it's just gotten so bad, it's the worst it's ever been. And so we see just a completely trivial early game, and we see offlaners that are basically carries, and we see 4 positions even that are basically carries, and we've seen this probably for 6 months. Think about it. We had Muerta playing carry from the 4 position, I think at TI. Think about that. She was just straight up buying carry items playing 4 position. Now we see the same thing with Hoodwink, with all of these 4 positions that are just almost transitioning right into carries. And yes, they've nerfed Nature's Prophet recently a lot, and he was picked as a 5 too. But people were picking that and then just going straight up carry items, and it's not even that much of a grief. Like, it's a little bit of a grief, but still not even that much of a grief. Like, especially also because you can go this Maelstrom Rod of Atos combination, which is a little bit of stun and control that just helps you transition into more of a carry build, so that is part of it too. But still, like, it's just crazy that this is happening, and this is happening because there's so much gold on the map, there's so much space, like, everybody can just farm. And the beginning game, like the early game, the laning stage is so trivialized because it's impossible to push, and because there's so much gold on the map, it just feels like the first 20 minutes mean absolutely nothing. Now, I don't know if this is something you guys have experienced in your games or not, but the early game, like, you can absolutely crush the laning stage, or you can get absolutely crushed in the laning stage yourself. Like, you can be 10, 15 kills to like 3. And it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter because it's so hard to close out the game and restrict the map access that the enemy cores or your cores are going to farm. And as long as you just hang around, like, and it's just not completely like 99% over and the enemy team makes some mistakes and things like that, they're going to throw. Like, it's just going to happen. It happens all the time. And it's super annoying because, like, when you win, it just doesn't feel fulfilling almost. Because it feels like you just made, like, your team made so many stupid mistakes. Like, people are just feeding constantly. Like, you'll have a core, like an offlaner or a carrier or whoever, that's just, like, feeding relentlessly, like, griefing or whatever, pissed off, like, tipping people, buying back, and you end up winning the game because it, like, doesn't even matter because you guys got farm and it was impossible for the enemy to push. Or on the other side, it feels like you stopped the game, you did everything right, and then just, like, somehow, you know, it's 45 minutes because you couldn't close out the game, and then you're just like, we stomped that carry into the ground. He had no farm at like 20, 25 minutes, and now suddenly it's 45 minutes and he has farm. He has like 4 or 5 items now because it's like, it didn't matter. He could just farm his way back in the game, and that just happens in every single game. It just makes so much of the game trivial that it seems pointless, and it just comes down to, well, why don't we just fast forward through the whole thing, just, you know, drop us all in at 30 minutes, give us all items, and let's just go. So that's a huge problem with this patch. I don't know how they're going to fix it, though. I mean, they can obviously get rid of the glyphs, like I said. They can do some other stuff with gold and power creep, but this is like the worst power creep has ever been. And I mean, obviously, that's kind of just like a tautology in a way. Like, it's just going to be true, like, naturally, that as power creep happens, that's kind of part of the definition, is like things get worse. So right now is the worst it's ever going to be unless they do some change. But still, it feels like absolutely horrible with the state of the game right now, especially with also like giving Lion basically all of Pugna's ability, and his most useless skill has become Pugna now. It's like, why did we do that? And, like, you know, Zeus has mobility, Sniper has mobility, Drow doesn't really have mobility, but it's like a pseudo weird mobility thing. I mean, yes, she's not like moving with it, but you know what I mean. It just feels bad because all the heroes are converging into a similar kind of hero, and all the uniqueness of these heroes have kind of gone to the wayside. And obviously that's not fully true. It's not completely 100% the case. I mean, these heroes still have identities, but it's just annoying. And then the other thing is, like, yes, we want, you know, supports to get more items, and it was very annoying back in the day, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever, when you're playing 5 position and you know, all you have is boots and a freaking wand, and you're running around with like boots, wand, and a ward because you had to buy wards and they cost money and all this stuff. You had to buy couriers. I mean, just think about that back in the day. It's kind of insane. But still, maybe a good thing to give support some gold. But when you have 4 positions, buying Daedalus as like a 3rd item, then you know something has gone horribly wrong. Like, this is not the game that it was before. And that's not to say it's not fun. That's not to say there's not ways to improve it or make it better or to kind of change it without, like, drastically changing the game. And this isn't supposed to be a rant of, like, reverse the map changes, get rid of neutral items, all this stuff. Like, I don't want to say that, although my opinion kind of is that in some ways. I still just want to say that despite all those things and the bigger picture that we don't necessarily need to get into, I think it's just this patch is definitely going to be better served, or the game is going to be better served, if this patch or the next patch is not as bad as this one in terms of trivializing the early game and giving everybody so much farm. So it needs to, like, just the games need to be quicker, needs to be easier to push, need to be rewarded more for actually stomping in the lane and, like, closing out the map and stuff like that. And it needs to be harder for the enemy to just split push or farm the map if you do get a lead early. That's not to say it shouldn't be the case that you can come back at all. Like, we don't want that, but it definitely is probably more in favor of long games and drawn out and coming back than I've ever seen it before, to the point that it just feels pointless in the early game, like I've said. So that's definitely the thing that I think they should change in the future patch, in this next patch coming up. And we'll see what they do. I don't feel like they're going to make any kind of like insane change. I think it's just going to be maybe big stuff, but not like obviously expanding map type of thing. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Obviously, hoping the new hero is good and stuff like that and fun to play. And I don't know, maybe like the new hero could be like a carry. I know Muerta's kind of a carry, but like kind of not. I just want like a straight up real carry. Like Muerta was kind of that, and I feel like they tried to do that, and then it just became a support. But anyway, not to digress too much on that point. But yeah, that is what I hope for the next patch. That's the problem with this current patch. Maybe I'll do more videos like these in the future once the patch gets like stale and we can see what the problems are. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.